Hello everybody and welcome to another Level 2 BTEC music video. This one is a bit of a different video again from the ones that I've done previously. We have the virtual textbook videos. They give you all of the content that you need in order to take the Unit 1 exam. Then there's the Minecraft revision video, which gives you some cues to help you remember some of that information. And now I'm moving on to a new series of how to answer videos. These are where I take a real exam past paper question and I take you through exactly how I would answer it in an attempt to get maximum marks. So what we're doing today is we are looking at a question from BTEC First Award in Music. It's the Unit 1, which is the exam unit, the music industry, and we're going to look at a Section B question. And specifically, we're going to look at the 8 marker at the end of this. This is taken from the January 2016 paper, one of the oldest papers that we have available for us to look at. And I'm going to take you through exactly how I would answer it. So, this is the question, or rather the start of the section that we are going to look at. It's Section B, and it's what I call a brief question. That is where there is a brief that you need to read in order to give you all the information that you are going to need to answer the question successfully. So brief A should be used to answer questions 13 to 17, and it's actually question 17 that we are going to look at, the big 8 marker. The 8 markers tend to be the ones that cause students the most problem. So read brief A carefully and then answer the questions. Brief A. Convex. Convex is a popular music venue in the city centre. Callum has worked at the venue as the manager for 5 years and is now considering opening his own live music venue on the outskirts of the city. So that is the brief. That's the information that we're going to need to answer. Now questions 13, 14, 15 and 16 are shorter answer questions. They're not my focus here. I'm going to focus on this question, number 17. Some local residents are concerned about the potential negative impact Callum's new venue might create in the neighbourhood. Discuss the concerns local residents might have with a live music venue and provide possible steps Callum might take to reassure them. Question 17, 8 marks. So let me take you through the process that I use in the classroom and myself when I'm coming to answer these questions. It's a 4-part process. We have, first of all, probably the most important one, and yet the one that gets forgotten most often, read the question, or RTQ. Might be a favourite line for teachers, but the reason we say it so often is because people still don't properly read questions, and as a result, when they've got a little bit of adrenaline flowing through them in an exam situation, they miss out key information and they miss out on marks. The second part is decoding the question, looking at it and saying, what is this question actually asking of me? What is it going to need from me in order for me to get 8 marks? Then point explain the question, or PETQ. That is where we make sure that we have enough content to gain all of the marks that are available for it. And number 4, conclude the question, or CTQ. Very, very important, and I will explain more about that as we go through. So let's start this process. Step 1. Read the question. I have already done it for you. Some local residents are concerned about the potential negative impact Callum's new venue might create in the neighbourhood. Discuss the concerns local residents might have with a live music venue and provide possible steps Callum might take to reassure them. So, let's look at some of the exam language that's being used. The word discuss is included, and discuss is one that can cause people problems. The way that I define discuss in my classroom is to show all parts that make up a scenario. But there are also other terms which are used very often with these 8-mark questions, which are very, very similar. There's evaluate, which adds in an element to discuss of putting one side or the other, so the pros and cons for a scenario, and also analyse, which is where I say that they're asking you to use knowledge which isn't contained within the question to get all of the marks. This one is quite a straightforward one. It is just a discuss. So it is giving content and then explaining why that content is relevant in order to pick up all 8 of the marks. Step 2, DTQ, decode the question. Okay, we've got quite a lot of information and we need to make sure that we are fully understanding what's being asked of us. So the first thing that I would do is I would draw myself a little table, and you can do this on the exam paper without having to use sheets for notes or anything like that. It's fully expected that you can do tables and that kind of thing on the paper. It's asking you for 2 things. It's asking you what are the concerns of the residents and what are the steps Callum might take. So I've divided the question straight down the middle. And what I'm going to say is because we have a total of 8 marks available, is I'm already setting aside in my mind that we're going to need 4 points in this area, we're going to need 4 points in here, and then if we draw a conclusion, done. We're going to be making sure that we're picking up all 8 of those marks. So we're going to have 4 concerns of residents, 4 steps that he might take, explanation for all of them, and a conclusion, and we'll have 8 marks. Here we go. So I literally dropped into my own knowledge, and I thought to myself, if this was happening in my local area, what concerns might I have as a resident if it was suddenly announced to me that a new music venue might be opening up in my area? And I used a common sense approach. I didn't really rely on that much content from the exam spec. I used my real life thoughts as to how I would actually feel in this situation. So, more people in the area. If you're going to open a music venue, it's going to attract more people. It's as simple as that. What sort of things are they going to create? Well, they're probably going to create parking problems, or there's going to be additional congestion, there's going to be more people around, there's going to be more traffic. That is a perfectly valid first point for us to make. Noise. People generate noise, and music venues in particular generate noise. So we're going to have the noise from the music itself and from people as they arrive and leave. If I was living close to a venue, I'd be worried about both of those things, and I want to know how the owner, Callum in this case, was going to address them. Litter, mess or damage in the local area. I actually don't live that far away from a music venue, and one of the things that we have had problems in the past is we have had a bit of this. We've had a bit of extra litter, a bit of extra mess, specifically as a result of events at the music venue, and it's also possible that we might have some damage to local property as well. So again, common sense, not even really contained on the exam specification. My 4th point, attracting the wrong type of people to the area. That's people involved in drink, drugs. The area could lose its reputation, could even affect house prices in the area, which is something that people do think about. You know, whenever a new project appears, be it a music venue or something else, it could have a potential impact on your house price, and people do worry about that. So, for each of those, we need a step that Callum might take in order to address the issue. So again, working through one at a time. How can he solve the problem of parking problems? Well, he can provide parking at the venue, make sure that he's got parking as a car park so that he doesn't have to rely on people parking on the streets and therefore affecting his neighbours' ability to park outside their houses, perhaps. He could limit the capacity, only allowing a certain number of people into the venue at any one time, making sure that he's got a suitable amount of parking to match up with the capacity of the venue. He could also encourage them to use public transport. We're going to explain a little bit later how he might do that, but I'm just popping down ideas at this stage. Second up, the noise. How's he going to deal with it? Well, the obvious one is to soundproof his venue. He could also put up signs informing patrons about neighbours. You sometimes see this in restaurants or other places which are open late. They have signs up in their car parks saying, we have people around who are, not enjoying themselves in our music venue. They are our neighbours. Please be respectful for them as you are arriving and leaving. How about the litter and mess situation? Well, rubbish bins is the obvious one. And you can also put up CCTV in the area if people are worried about their property getting damaged. CCTV is a good deterrent. It's going to stop people from damaging property in the area. What about those wrong people? I've put inverted commas. Have security staff, bag searches, and have strict policies on drugs, on alcohol in the venue. All of those things are things that Callum can do to hopefully make his neighbours feel a little bit better about potentially having a concert venue or a music venue on their doorstep. So there we go. We have 8 points there. We have 8 marks worth of stuff already, and we haven't even really started explaining any of it yet. That comes next. So next stage, here we go. PETQ, okay? This is point explain. Now, you've probably used this in other subjects, the point explain approach, but it's very, very effective for making sure that you are covering everything and picking up all of the marks that you can. So what I've done is I have colour coded each of those points that I've just made in my table. Now, you won't really do this in the exam. This is just a sort of illustrative approach for you so you can see exactly what I'm doing. So there's no new information there. It's just the first 2 I've coloured as red, the next 2 I've coloured as amber, the next 2 I've coloured as green, and the last 2 I've coloured as blue. So that as I'm writing my answer and expanding it out and explaining it a little bit, you can see what's going on. So the first point in red, more people in the area, parking problems, congestion, traffic. So we could provide parking at the venue, limit the capacity, and encourage use of public transport. Here's what I've turned this into. Now, I've also done this So I've put anything from the first column, the concerns of residents, I've put that in bold, and anything in the second column, the steps that Callum might take, I've put those in italics, so you can see exactly how I am pointing and then explaining. So the point, having a concert venue in the local area is likely to mean that more people will be in that area. This will generate problems like more traffic, and parking could become more difficult, which could impact local residents on a daily basis. That is the point. That is information giving. Next up, I'm going to explain that and say, how can Callum resolve that issue? So to help this, Callum could create a car park at the venue so that people don't have to park on the street. He could also encourage the use of public transport, perhaps by making a deal with a local transport company. Okay, so you've got two different sections there, and that is most definitely worth 2 marks. A mark for the first section and a mark for the bit in italics. Next up, a concert venue is likely to create noise. We know that, we've already written it down in our first column, both from the music itself and from the people as they leave and arrive. I'm not being flowery, I'm not writing for the sake of writing, I'm just giving the information which is necessary to pick up the marks. To help this, Callum could soundproof the venue and consider adding a noise limiter. So I've just slightly developed what I had in my second column. A noise limiter, if you're not familiar, is a device which automatically shuts off all the power in a venue if the noise exceeds a certain level, and they're very commonly installed in music venues. Sometimes the local council might insist that a sound limiter is installed in a music venue. He could also put up signs asking his customers to be mindful of neighbours when they are arriving or leaving. So again, there I have drawn on my real life experience. I have been to venues and restaurants and all sorts of places that have signs up in their car park or near their entrance and exit saying, please be mindful of our neighbours and make sure that you are courteous and polite to them. Next up, in green, entertainment venues also have a habit of generating mess, such as litter or even damage to the local area. That's true. Again, it's not something necessarily that we've specifically studied as part of the course, it's just something that we can draw on from our own life experience. Callum would need to make sure that there are plenty of litter bins and perhaps a CCTV system to deter damage to the local area. Just developing what I've written in the table and developing it a little bit. The residents might also worry that the venue will attract the wrong type of people and there might be issues with drink or drugs. Callum could address these fears by hiring security staff and insisting that his patrons have bag searches as they enter. He could also assure the local residents that there will be a zero tolerance approach to drugs and similar things. And there, pretty much, we already have 8 marks worth of content. If you say 1 mark for each of the bold sections and 1 mark for each of the italic sections, that's 8 marks worth of content. It's covered everything that you've put in your table, and it also covers most of the different areas that you could think about when you're considering this question overall. But it is very, very important to conclude these 8 mark questions. Now you'll see when we get to the mark scheme in a second that this one doesn't specifically mention a conclusion, but they often do, and as a result it is always worthwhile, because you don't know what the mark scheme is going to say while you're doing the paper, always worth writing a conclusion at the end of your answer. So how is Callum going to show all of the efforts that he's going to? How is he going to help set the residents' mind at rest? Well, quite simply, he needs to meet with them and have a discussion. This can form our conclusion. So this is going to be a very short section at the end, just tying everything together and saying what Callum could do to make sure that his neighbours, or his potential new neighbours, are going to be happy that they've got his new venue in their midst. So here we go. In order to assure the local residents, Callum should meet with them to demonstrate his plans, and you don't need to give more information about the plans there because you've shown them up above in the coloured paragraphs, and also show them that he is approachable if there are any issues. That there will definitely, well I say definitely, we haven't looked at the mark scheme yet, but I am confident that that is an 8 mark answer for this question. It's not very long, it's not very wordy, it's quite to the point. In fact, you could probably answer it bullet point style, and so long as you covered everything that's there, you could still manage to get the 8 marks. But that is definitely 8 marks, I feel. Let's double check by having a little look at the mark scheme. Now I promise I did not look at this mark scheme before I wrote this answer. I did it blind in the same way that you guys did. Well actually no, I say I did it blind. I have seen this question before because I have taught this paper before, so not entirely blind, but I didn't refer back to the mark scheme. But if you just look through, anything underlined in red is something which I have specifically mentioned in my answer. So going down the side there, we have far more than 8 marks worth of content. But that's not always enough with these questions. There's often a second part in the mark scheme that looks like this, and it tells the examiner how they should be awarding the marks. So 0 marks, no rewardable material. That would probably mean that the question has been left blank. 1 mark, a few key points identified, or 1 point described in some detail. Note that 1 point described in detail is still only 1 mark. Yep, so we need to make sure that we are always explaining things in detail, because we're going to need that in order to generate these higher marks. 1 to 3. The answer is likely to be in the form of a list. Now that will probably just be as in it's single word answers. We don't want that. Points made will be superficial / generic and not applied directly linked to the situation in the question. So they'll be talking about other parts of the music industry which are not specifically relevant. That can, however, still get you 3 marks out of 8. 4 to 6 marks, some points identified or a few key points described. The answer is unbalanced. Now this word crops up a lot on mark schemes, unbalanced. And that is why whenever I'm doing these 8 mark questions with students, I always say, always make sure you argue both sides of this, pros and cons, even if you are going to argue one particular way in your conclusion. Try and make sure that you have a balanced perspective in your answer. Most points made will be relevant to the situation in the question, but the link will not always be clear. What we want is a range of points described or a few key points explained in detail. The majority of points made will be relevant and there will be a clear link to the situation in the question. Just going back for a second, okay, you definitely have enough content and enough explanation in that answer in order to justify getting the 7 to 8 mark criterion. I would hope that easily that is an 8 mark answer. That's the whole point of this video. So there we have it. The first attempt at answering an 8 mark question. The first in what I hope will be a series of videos showing you how to go through these. But how have I done? Have I made clear what you need? Have I helped? Are there other things you need to know? Please, please, please tell me in the comments down below. Ask questions. That's what this platform is all about. I'm here to help you. And if I haven't helped you as much as I could, tell me how I can improve it. If you have had help, please, please, please remember to like this video. It really does help the channel. And also subscribe so you get all of the updates in the future. And check through our other videos as well so that you get much more help for your BTEC exams. And good luck when it does come round to the time of actually taking the exam. I hope that I've been helpful to you. See you soon.